Hey folks, I'm about to get on a plane and head out to Sketchup boot camp in Vancouver. But before I go, I thought I'd give you a little sample of the courses that I'm working on. This one's for my Procreate Plus Sketchup course, and it just shows you a way to make a quick hand rendering in about 2 hours based on a Sketchup for iPad model. And I hope to see you out at Sketchup boot camp. But if I don't, please enjoy this. So that is most of our house, and now I want to go back. Now I want to put those shadows in. Now remember, we made a placeholder copy, which I'll now bring up to the top. We made a placeholder copy of our SketchUp model, okay? And the reason for that was we wanted to, in my case, I wanted to have these shadows calculated for me rather than make them up, because I think it makes the house and the rendering so much more believable. So here are those shadows, and I can now, I'm way up here in this layer, I just moved it up. I can reduce the opacity of that layer just to kind of see, make sure I can see what's behind it. And what I'll do now is I'll go, since I can move layers around, I'll go above this reference layer, what I'm calling a reference layer. And when we make shadows, as those of you that took the tools course and the design course, you'll remember, if we proactively make this a multiplied layer, in other words, if we hit the blending mode icon and proactively make it multiply, then whatever we apply as a shadow will always show the line work underneath still. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to call this the shadow layer so we can find it easily later on, and I encourage you to do the same thing. So again, just tap the layer and then tap rename, and then I'm calling it shadow. I have it in multiply blend mode. And now I'm going to go back to this light gray violet that I love to use for shadows, okay? And you'll see why. It doesn't look dark at all, but when I put it in multiply mode, you'll see something amazing, okay? So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go to the selection tool and make sure that color fill is activated. And now I'm going to come up inside, and I'm just going to recreate the shape of this shadow as determined by SketchUp, okay? So I'll tap in here. That shadow fills this entire void all the way down to the floor. It comes back across, and now it doesn't, shadows never fall across open sky. So at this point, I'm going to come back up. I'm not just going to go straight up here like this. Let me try and give you an example of what that would have been like. Well, I don't know what's going on with my pencil. Maybe something's happened. I'll tap back out of that, okay? Let me start that again. I'm going to come across the bottom all the way down to the floor, across to the point where the wall breaks again. And then I'm going to come across here. Now, instead of going right back up and joining this, I don't want to do that because that's covering that opening. So I'll do it a third time. I apologize. This is the last time we'll do it this many times. I go to the corner of this wall. I come back over. Now I'm going to go up and around this opening, okay, and back down to where I see the shadow pickup. And then I'm going to tap here, and there is my shadow. Now, before I change any colors, or before I get rid of this underlined SketchUp, let me just finish this, okay? Let's keep our focus. And now we'll do a shadow. There'll be a bit of a shadow that comes down this tiny little sliver of a wall. And then it'll come down to the point where it picks up here, and it'll zap down and hit the bottom of this wall, and then it'll come back up there like that. And then let's see where else we have it. Back here in the cutout for the upstairs roof deck, that shadow there'll be a bit of a shadow that gets cast by this overhead beam and closes up like that, and that shadow will continue down below this safety crossbar. Let me get that angle right and come back up, and I'm going to go ahead and just as a conceit, I'm going to have this shadow go up and grab that tiny little mullion like that. It may not be what it actually does, but that's what I'm going to make it do. Okay. And again, this is the wrong color, but we're keeping that SketchUp model there as a reference. Now, the only place we don't have a reference is here. So I'm going to make up the shadow that falls from this roof canopy that I added, okay? Because I did not have that in the SketchUp model. So I'm just going to make that up and say that it comes down and covers most of this door, and then it pops across and then goes down into the door opening and fills up that door opening, and then it comes back to this point and all the way across and then back up. And I have to make this line parallel to these lines, and then it's going to come back up like that. Now I got that wrong. I have to adjust that. So now this line needs to be parallel to this line, okay? So that looks a little better, and then I'll go ahead and finish the bottom of that canopy with a shadow too. And there's the shadow there, okay? And some of you that are better at shadows than I am may have noticed problems, but let's see what happens when we start there. So I'll now turn off that SketchUp layer that we used as a guide, and let's see what it looks like. Ready? Okay. That's pretty striking. Now that's probably too bright for some of you, but when you combine it with that, mustard inside of that roof deck, it gets kind of interesting. But I'll let you all decide whether or not you want to keep those very minty colors, and I will back off on this shadow. I'm going to make this shadow more desaturated, okay? Because I like the darkness of it, but I don't want it to be too violet. So I'll go to the hue, saturation, and brightness, and I will just dial back the saturation until it has just the right amount of, still a little touch of violet in it that has a useful contrast with the grass here, and that's what I like, okay? So we're getting very close here. Again, there have been times when I would be done with this and need to get to the meeting very quickly. But for those of you that want to keep going, let's stick around and just put the last few details in, okay? So in the next segment, we'll add the entourage, and then we'll add this stone wall, and then we'll look for a few other touches that we might throw in, including one big move that I'm going to make on the sky that should take this whole thing to a different level. And the last thing we'll do is add shadows coming up from these trees, which will really be exciting. One of my favorite things to do. So I'll see you in the next episode where we do the entourage and the field stone wall and the sky, okay?